Your exhaustion may not be coming from working too hard. It may be coming from fighting yourself every day. And that is a very different problem, because when people feel tired, they usually search for physical answers. More sleep, more coffee, more supplements, another productivity system, another morning routine, another promise that somehow this week will finally be different. Yet there are people sleeping 8 hours who still wake up exhausted. There are people drinking expensive coffee who still feel mentally foggy. There are people taking every supplement recommended online while feeling less alive than they did years ago. Why? Because energy is not just physical. Energy is emotional. Energy is mental. Energy is relational. Energy is spiritual. And if any one of those systems is quietly draining you, no amount of caffeine can save you. The truth is uncomfortable. Most people are not tired because life is demanding. Most people are tired because they are carrying invisible weight. Weight nobody sees. Weight they rarely talk about. Weight they have become so accustomed to carrying that they no longer realize how heavy it has become. Think about the person who spends every day pretending to enjoy a career they secretly hate. Think about the person trapped in a relationship where every conversation feels like walking through broken glass. Think about the person who smiles in public and collapses emotionally in private. Think about the person constantly comparing themselves to strangers on a screen. Think about the person who never stops worrying about money. Think about the person who never feels good enough, no matter how much they accomplish. All of those situations create energy leaks. And the frightening part is this: energy leaks rarely announce themselves. They operate silently, a slow drip, one drop at a time, until one day you wake up and wonder where your motivation went, where your ambition went, where your excitement went, where your spark went. You assume something is wrong with you. You tell yourself you're lazy, undisciplined, weak. But what if the problem isn't laziness? What if your internal battery is being drained by forces you haven't identified yet? That question changes everything, because you cannot solve a problem you misdiagnose. Imagine driving a car with a hole in the fuel tank. Every day you keep adding fuel. Every day the tank keeps leaking. Eventually, you blame the engine. But the engine was never the problem. The leak was. And that brings us to the first principle of the energy code. Energy is created less by what you add and more by what you stop losing. Read that again in your mind. Energy is created less by what you add and more by what you stop losing. That one insight explains why some people transform their lives without dramatically changing their circumstances. Sometimes they simply stop participating in things that drain them. They stop arguing with people committed to misunderstanding them. They stop carrying guilt that belongs to the past. They stop saying yes when they mean no. They stop consuming information that makes them anxious. They stop chasing approval from people who are never going to give it. And suddenly, they feel alive again. Not because they gained energy, because they stopped leaking it. Years ago, a businessman was asked why he seemed calmer and more energetic in his 50s than he had been in his 30s. People expected him to reveal some secret productivity hack. Instead, he said something surprisingly simple. I got tired of carrying things that weren't mine. That was it. Not a new planner, not a new app, not some complicated strategy, just a decision. A decision to stop carrying unnecessary weight. There is wisdom hidden inside that statement. Because many adults are carrying emotional backpacks filled with stones, old regrets, old disappointments, old betrayals, old failures, old fears, and they wonder why every step feels exhausting. The backpack never comes off. It comes into every meeting, every conversation, every opportunity, every morning, every dream, and eventually carrying it becomes normal. But normal does not mean healthy. Normal does not mean necessary. Normal simply means familiar. One of the most dangerous experiences in life is becoming comfortable with chronic exhaustion. Because once exhaustion becomes familiar, you stop questioning it. You stop challenging it. You stop believing another reality is possible. You begin telling yourself, this is just adulthood. This is just life. This is how everybody feels. But is it? Look carefully. Some people wake up with enthusiasm. Some people finish work with energy still left to give. Some people pursue goals after long days. Some people continue growing despite setbacks. They're not superhuman. They're simply protecting their energy differently. And throughout this audiobook, we're going to uncover exactly how. We're going to explore hidden drains most people never notice. We're going to talk about mental clutter, emotional overload, digital exhaustion, decision fatigue, the cost of resentment, the burden of comparison, the danger of living disconnected from purpose, because your energy follows deeper laws than most people realize. That is why this audiobook is called The Energy Code, not because energy is mysterious, because it follows patterns, predictable patterns. Understand the code and your life begins to change. Ignore the code and exhaustion becomes your permanent companion. Now let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly alive? Not entertained, not distracted, alive. When was the last time you felt fully present, fully engaged, fully energized? Maybe it was years ago. Maybe it was during childhood. Maybe it was during a season when your life felt simpler. Maybe it was before responsibilities multiplied, before constant notifications, before comparison became a 24-hour activity. If that memory feels distant, don't worry. You're not broken. You haven't lost that version of yourself forever. You may simply have buried it beneath years of accumulated noise. And noise is expensive. Every notification costs attention. Every unresolved conflict costs emotional energy. Every unnecessary obligation costs mental space. Every act of pretending costs vitality, little by little, day by day, until the cost becomes invisible. If any part of this resonates with you, I want you to make a quiet agreement with yourself, not with me, not with anyone else, with yourself. Promise yourself that for the next few hours, you will listen honestly, not defensively, not judgmentally, honestly. Because awareness is the beginning of recovery. You cannot reclaim energy you refuse to examine. And the next discovery may be the most surprising of all. Because the greatest energy thief in modern life is not work. It is not stress. It is not even lack of sleep. It is something millions of people willingly carry with them every single day without realizing it. And once you see it, you will never look at your exhaustion the same way again. Hey there! We want to remind you that we often choose topics suggested by you, our viewers, in the comments. In the comments, you can suggest a topic or ask a question about what you'd like to see in our video. We read every comment carefully, so we promise not to miss a single one. Thank you. Let's keep going. Chapter 2. The Invisible Addiction to Stimulation. The modern world discovered something extraordinary about the human mind. It learned how to keep your attention without earning it. And that single reality may explain why so many people feel exhausted before noon. The greatest energy thief in modern life is not always physical effort. It is constant stimulation, not because stimulation is evil, because your brain was never designed to process this much information. For thousands of years, human beings lived in environments where information arrived slowly. A conversation, a letter, a book, a story shared around a fire. Today, before breakfast, many people have already consumed more information than their ancestors encountered in weeks. Messages, notifications, news alerts, videos, advertisements, emails, opinions, arguments, predictions, warnings, updates, endless updates, and every piece demands something from you. Attention, evaluation, reaction, decision, emotion. The cost seems small because each interaction lasts only seconds. But energy rarely disappears all at once. It disappears through accumulation. Imagine somebody lightly tapping your shoulder once, no problem. Now imagine someone doing it every 30 seconds for 12 hours. Eventually, you would feel exhausted, not because the taps were powerful, because they never stopped. That is exactly how modern stimulation affects the mind. Every notification is a tap, every headline is a tap, every piece of content is a tap. Your nervous system never fully settles. Your mind never fully rests. And eventually, you confuse overstimulation with fatigue. Years ago, exhaustion often came from physical labor. Today, exhaustion increasingly comes from cognitive overload. The brain is working constantly, sorting, filtering, comparing, analyzing, reacting, predicting, defending. Yet because you're sitting in a chair, you assume you're resting. But the mind may be running a marathon. Have you ever spent 2 hours scrolling and somehow felt worse afterward? Not refreshed, not inspired, just drained. That feeling is important. Pay attention to it, because it reveals something many people ignore. Not all rest is recovery. Some forms of rest actually increase exhaustion. The person watching short videos for 3 hours may feel more tired than the person who spent those same hours walking outside. The difference isn't effort, it's nervous system load. One activity scatters attention, the other restores it. This is one of the hidden principles of the energy code. Your energy grows where your attention becomes coherent. It drains where your attention becomes fragmented. Think about a magnifying glass. When sunlight is scattered, it warms gently. When sunlight becomes focused, it can start a fire. Human attention works similarly. Scattered attention creates weakness. Focused attention creates power. Yet modern systems profit from fragmentation. Every platform wants a piece of your attention. Every application wants engagement. Every company wants your eyes. Your attention has become one of the most valuable resources on earth. And yet most people give it away for free. Not because they're careless, because nobody taught them the cost. The cost appears later, in the form of fatigue, brain fog, lack of motivation, difficulty concentrating, constant distraction, emotional instability, and perhaps the most frustrating symptom of all, the feeling that you're busy all day but accomplished very little. That feeling creates a special kind of exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion, psychological exhaustion, because deep down you know your energy was spent. But you have nothing meaningful to show for it. That creates internal conflict, and internal conflict drains energy faster than almost anything else. You tell yourself you should be doing more. You criticize yourself. You feel guilty. Then you seek more distraction to escape the guilt. And the cycle repeats, day after day, week after week, year after year. This is why so many people feel trapped. They're not simply tired, they're caught inside an energy loop. A cycle where exhaustion creates distraction, distraction creates guilt, guilt creates more exhaustion, and exhaustion drives further distraction. Breaking that loop requires awareness, not perfection. Awareness. One executive described this realization in a fascinating way. He said, "I wasn't exhausted because I had too much to do. I was exhausted because my attention was constantly being interrupted." That distinction changed his life because he stopped focusing only on time management. He started focusing on attention management. Time and attention are not the same thing. You can have free time and still feel drained. You can have a busy schedule and still feel energized. The difference is often attention, where it goes, how it's used, whether it remains fragmented or focused. Imagine reading a meaningful book for an hour. Then imagine switching tasks every 60 seconds for an hour. At the end of both experiences, the clock shows the same amount of time passed. But your nervous system feels entirely different. One experience created coherence. The other created fragmentation. One restored energy. The other consumed it. This is why some of the most energized people in the world fiercely protect their attention. Not because they're antisocial, not because they're extreme, because they understand the relationship between attention and vitality. They know every unnecessary interruption comes with a hidden tax, and the tax is paid in energy. If you're listening right now and something feels familiar, perhaps this is worth reflecting on. How often do you sit in silence? Real silence. No phone, no podcast, no music, no scrolling, no notifications. Just you. For many people, that question creates discomfort, not because silence is dangerous, because silence reveals things. It reveals exhaustion, it reveals anxiety, it reveals unresolved emotions. And many people spend years using stimulation to avoid hearing themselves think. The tragedy is that what they avoid confronting continues draining energy beneath the surface. Imagine carrying a backpack full of rocks while listening to loud music. The music might distract you from the weight, but it doesn't remove the rocks. Eventually, the burden remains. This is why recovery begins with awareness. Awareness shows you where energy is leaking. Awareness reveals which activities genuinely restore you. Awareness separates stimulation from renewal, and those two things are not the same. Renewal leaves you stronger. Stimulation often leaves you emptier. One expands energy, the other temporarily masks depletion. There is a reason some of your clearest thoughts arrive during walks, showers, quiet mornings, or late-night reflection. Those moments reduce competing inputs. Your mind finally has space, space to process, space to connect ideas, space to heal, space to think. In many ways, energy returns when mental noise decreases. That may sound simple, but simple truths are often life-changing. If this idea resonates with you, I'd genuinely love to know where you're listening from and what part of your day feels most draining. Sometimes, sharing one honest observation helps people recognize they're not alone in their experience. Because millions of people are fighting the same invisible battle, they are not losing to laziness. They are losing to overload. And overload creates another hidden consequence. A consequence so common that most people mistake it for a personality flaw. They call themselves unmotivated. But motivation was never the real problem. The real problem is something far deeper, something happening inside the brain itself. And once you understand it, your entire relationship with energy begins to change. Chapter 3. Why Motivation Disappears. The most damaging myth about motivation is that motivated people feel like taking action. They don't, at least not as often as you imagine. This misunderstanding has quietly sabotaged millions of lives. Because when people lose motivation, they immediately assume something is wrong. Something is broken. Something has disappeared. They begin searching for inspiration. Another video, another quote, another book, another promise. But motivation is not a permanent state. It was never designed to be. Motivation is more like weather than architecture. It changes, it moves, it rises and falls. Yet most people build their entire lives around waiting for it, and that creates a dangerous cycle. They wait until they feel motivated to exercise. They wait until they feel motivated to start the business. They wait until they feel motivated to repair the relationship. They wait until they feel motivated to write the book. The problem is simple. The feeling rarely arrives on schedule, and eventually years pass. Dreams remain untouched. Potential remains dormant. Confidence slowly erodes. Then comes the most painful part. They start believing they lack discipline. But what if motivation isn't disappearing because you're weak? What if it's disappearing because your brain is trying to protect you? This is where the energy code becomes deeper. Because motivation is not simply emotional, it is biological. Your brain constantly evaluates energy expenditure. Every action carries a cost. Every decision requires resources. And when your system detects depletion, it begins conserving energy. Not because it hates your goals, because survival comes first. Imagine trying to sprint on a phone battery sitting at 3%. The phone automatically reduces performance. Not because it's defective, because it's protecting itself. Human beings operate similarly. When energy reserves fall, your brain starts eliminating non-essential activities. Creative projects, long-term goals, personal growth, exercise, learning, ambition. These become harder not because you stopped caring, because your system is attempting to preserve resources. This realization changed everything for a young entrepreneur who once believed he was lazy. For years, he blamed himself. He criticized himself constantly. Every unfinished project became evidence of weakness. Every missed opportunity became proof he lacked discipline. Then one day, he tracked something unusual. Not his productivity, his energy. He noticed his motivation always disappeared after periods of emotional stress. Arguments, financial uncertainty, relationship tension, lack of recovery. The pattern became impossible to ignore. His problem wasn't discipline. His system was overloaded. The moment he addressed the overload, motivation began returning naturally. Not perfectly, but consistently. And that's a critical distinction. Many people try to force motivation. Few people learn how to create conditions where motivation can thrive. Those are very different approaches. One relies on pressure, the other relies on alignment. Think about a time when you felt deeply energized, not excited for an hour, genuinely energized. What was happening? Perhaps you were making progress toward something meaningful. Perhaps you felt connected to people you cared about. Perhaps your mind felt clear. Perhaps your life felt aligned. Notice something important. Motivation often appears naturally when energy is available. It doesn't need to be forced. It emerges, like a fire reigniting when oxygen returns. This is why exhausted people frequently misdiagnose themselves. They believe they need more discipline. Sometimes What they really need is recovery. They need clarity. They need emotional resolution. They need sleep. They need purpose. They need space. The challenge is that modern culture rarely teaches this. Instead, it glorifies relentless output. Keep pushing, keep grinding, keep working, keep producing. And while effort absolutely matters, effort without recovery creates diminishing returns. Even elite athletes understand this. The strongest athletes in the world don't train every second. They recover strategically because growth happens during recovery, not just exertion. Yet many people apply this wisdom to the body while ignoring the mind. They expect their minds to perform endlessly. No breaks, no reflection, no restoration, just constant output. Eventually, something gives. Focus weakens, creativity declines, motivation disappears, and exhaustion becomes normal. One of the hidden signs of energy depletion is something almost everyone experiences: decision fatigue. At first, it seems insignificant. What should I wear? What should I eat? Should I answer this email? Should I start this project? Should I go to the gym? Every decision consumes energy. Individually, the cost seems tiny. Collectively, it becomes enormous. By evening, many people are mentally exhausted not because they worked harder than previous generations, but because they made hundreds of decisions their brains were never designed to process continuously. This explains why intelligent people sometimes make terrible choices late in the day. Their intelligence isn't gone, their resources are depleted, the battery is low, and low batteries seek comfort. Comfort food, comfort entertainment, comfort habits, comfort avoidance. The brain chooses immediate relief over long-term growth. Again, not because you're weak, because you're human. This understanding should not become an excuse. It should become awareness. Awareness creates leverage, because once you recognize the pattern, you can work with your biology instead of fighting it. You begin placing important tasks where energy is highest. You begin protecting recovery. You begin treating attention as a valuable resource. You begin reducing unnecessary decisions. You begin understanding yourself instead of attacking yourself. And something remarkable happens. Self-respect returns. Many exhausted people secretly carry shame. Shame for procrastinating. Shame for lacking consistency. Shame for unfinished goals. Shame for not becoming who they thought they would be by now. But shame is one of the most expensive emotions on earth because it consumes energy while producing nothing. It creates paralysis, not progress. Imagine trying to climb a mountain while carrying someone on your back who constantly insults you. Every step becomes harder. That voice exists inside many people. The inner critic, the constant judge, the relentless commentator, always pointing out flaws, never acknowledging progress, always demanding more. And over time, that voice becomes exhausting, not motivating, exhausting. This is why energy and self-talk are connected. The words you repeatedly tell yourself become part of your internal environment. A harsh environment drains energy. A supportive environment restores it. This doesn't mean lying to yourself. It means speaking truthfully, constructively, responsibly. Instead of saying, "I'm lazy," you might ask, "What is draining my energy?" Instead of saying, "I always fail," you might ask, "What pattern am I repeating?" Instead of saying, "What's wrong with me?" you might ask, "What needs attention?" Questions create possibility. Condemnation creates paralysis. And energy thrives where possibility exists. Years ago, an elderly mentor shared a sentence that stayed with me. He said, "The mind becomes tired long before the body does." At first it sounded poetic. Later, it revealed itself as profound, because so much exhaustion begins internally, not in muscles, in meaning, not in movement, in mental load, not in work, in worry. That distinction changes how you approach recovery, because the next layer of the energy code is perhaps the most overlooked of all. There is a form of exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. Millions of people are experiencing it right now. They go to bed tired, wake up tired, take vacations and remain tired, sleep longer and remain tired. Because their real exhaustion is emotional. And emotional exhaustion follows rules most people never learn. In the next chapter, we're going to uncover one of the deepest energy drains in human life, a hidden burden that silently steals enthusiasm, clarity, and vitality from countless people every single day. And once you recognize it, you'll begin seeing it everywhere. We'd also like to remind you that we have a private members community on our channel. All members can vote on the topic of the next video, have priority in the comments section, and most importantly, gain access to exclusive videos and lessons covering the most relevant topics and information specific to this month. Thank you. Let's keep moving forward. Chapter 4. The exhaustion sleep cannot fix. There is a kind of tiredness that no mattress can solve, no vacation can erase it, no weekend can heal it, no amount of sleeping in can remove it, because the source isn't physical. The source is emotional. And emotional exhaustion is one of the most misunderstood forms of fatigue in modern life. When people hear the phrase emotional exhaustion, they often imagine dramatic situations, major crises, heartbreak, loss, trauma. And while those experiences absolutely create emotional fatigue, they are not the only causes. In fact, many emotionally exhausted people appear completely functional from the outside. They go to work, answer emails, attend meetings, pay bills, smile politely, handle responsibilities. Everything looks normal. Yet internally, they feel as though they are dragging an invisible weight through every hour of every day. The reason is simple. Emotional exhaustion rarely arrives overnight. It accumulates quietly, gradually. One unresolved disappointment, one difficult conversation avoided, one betrayal never processed, 1 year of pretending you're okay when you're not, one season of carrying everyone else's problems, 1 decade of putting yourself last, little by little, until eventually your emotional reserves become depleted. Think about your phone battery. Some applications run visibly. You know they're active. Others operate silently in the background. You barely notice them. Yet they consume enormous amounts of power. Human emotions work the same way. The arguments you replay in your head, the resentment you never addressed, the fear you never confronted, the guilt you never released, the grief you never processed. Those experiences become background applications, always running, always consuming energy, even when you're not consciously thinking about them. This explains why some people wake up tired despite sleeping all night. Their body rested, their emotional system never did. A woman once described it perfectly. She said, "I felt like I was carrying a conversation that ended 5 years ago." 5 years. Imagine that. A single, unresolved experience occupying mental and emotional space for half a decade. How many people are doing exactly that right now? How many people are carrying old versions of themselves, old regrets, old mistakes, old identities, old pain, every day, everywhere they go? And because the burden has existed for so long, they assume it's normal. But carrying something for a long time does not make it lighter. It only makes it familiar. One of the most expensive emotional states is resentment. Not because resentment hurts the other person, because resentment keeps you emotionally connected to what wounded you. Imagine holding a heavy suitcase. The person who handed it to you walks away, but you keep carrying it. Hours later, the suitcase still feels heavy. Days later, it still feels heavy. Years later, it still feels heavy. At some point, the question is no longer who handed you the suitcase. The question becomes why you're still carrying it. That doesn't mean forgiveness is easy. It doesn't mean pain should be ignored. It doesn't mean harmful behavior should be excused. It simply means your energy is too valuable to remain permanently chained to the past. One of the most liberating truths in life is this: healing is not something you do for the people who hurt you. Healing is something you do for yourself. Because every day you remain emotionally trapped, part of your energy remains trapped with you. And energy trapped in the past cannot be used to build the future. Another hidden source of emotional exhaustion is something many caring people struggle with: over-responsibility. The belief that you must carry everyone, fix everyone, rescue everyone, support everyone, protect everyone, be available to everyone. Strong people often suffer from this more than anyone else because others become accustomed to leaning on them. The dependable friend, the reliable partner, the responsible sibling, the problem solver, the listener, the caretaker, the strong one. And over time, something dangerous happens. Everyone becomes comfortable relying on them, except they forget one thing. Even strong people need support. Even strong people become tired. Even strong people have limits. There is a sentence many exhausted people desperately need to hear: you are allowed to care without carrying everything. Listen to that again. You are allowed to care without carrying everything. Those are not the same thing. You can love people deeply without becoming responsible for their entire life. You can support someone without sacrificing yourself. You can help without drowning. Yet countless people confuse love with self-abandonment. And self-abandonment always comes with an energy cost. Always. The mind constantly tracks imbalance, even when you're not consciously aware of it. If you continuously give without replenishing yourself, eventually your system begins sending signals: irritability, burnout, numbness, brain fog, lack of enthusiasm, emotional detachment. These are not signs of weakness. Often they are signs of depletion. Your inner system saying something important. Something needs attention. Something needs restoration. Something needs to change. One of the greatest mistakes people make is waiting until complete burnout before listening. Burnout is not the first warning. It's the final warning. The earlier signals arrive long before: loss of joy, reduced patience, constant fatigue, difficulty focusing, feeling emotionally flat, losing interest in things you once loved. These signs matter. Pay attention to them. They are information, not failures, information. And information creates opportunity. There is another form of emotional exhaustion that modern society rarely discusses: the exhaustion of pretending. Pretending you're happy, pretending you're confident, pretending you're fine, pretending you're excited, pretending you're not struggling, pretending you don't care, pretending everything is okay. Pretending consumes extraordinary energy because maintaining a mask requires constant effort. Eventually, Many people become so skilled at performing that they lose touch with what they're actually feeling. The performance becomes automatic. The smile appears on schedule. The polite responses arrive effortlessly. Everything looks fine. Meanwhile, their internal world becomes increasingly disconnected. And disconnection creates exhaustion. Because human beings were never designed to spend their entire lives performing. Authenticity is energizing. Pretending is draining. That doesn't mean telling everyone everything. It doesn't mean emotional oversharing. It means living honestly with yourself. Being willing to acknowledge reality. Being willing to admit what hurts. Being willing to recognize what needs healing, because awareness creates freedom. Denial creates fatigue. Perhaps the most powerful emotional energy source of all is hope. Not fantasy, not wishful thinking, hope. The belief that change remains possible. The belief that tomorrow can improve. The belief that growth remains available. The belief that your current situation is not your permanent identity. Hope generates energy because it creates movement. Despair generates exhaustion because it creates stagnation. This is why purpose matters so deeply. Purpose gives suffering context. Purpose gives effort meaning. Purpose gives difficulty direction. Without purpose, even small obstacles feel overwhelming. With purpose, people often endure extraordinary challenges. A parent raising children, an entrepreneur building a dream, an artist creating meaningful work, a student pursuing a future, a survivor rebuilding a life. Purpose does not remove difficulty. It transforms your relationship with difficulty. And that transformation changes energy. If you've stayed with me this far, take a moment to reflect on one question. What emotional burden have you been carrying that no longer belongs in your future? Don't rush the answer. Sit with it, because that answer may reveal one of the largest leaks in your energy system. And in the next chapter, we're going to explore another source of exhaustion that hides in plain sight. A force so common that most people encounter it every single day without recognizing its impact. It begins with comparison. And comparison may be costing you far more energy than you realize. Chapter 5. The Comparison Trap. Some of the most exhausted people in the world are not carrying too much work. They're carrying too many comparisons. And the tragedy is that most of them don't even realize it. Comparison rarely announces itself. It slips quietly into the mind. A glance at someone else's success, a photo, a promotion, a relationship, a house, a vacation, a body, a lifestyle, a milestone, a number on a screen. At first it seems harmless, just information, just curiosity, just awareness. But something subtle happens. The mind begins measuring. Where am I compared to them? Why are they ahead? What am I doing wrong? Why don't I have that? Why am I behind? And suddenly, a peaceful moment becomes a mental competition. A calm morning becomes self-criticism. A good life becomes an inadequate life. Not because anything changed, because comparison changed the lens. This is one of the least discussed energy drains in modern life. The constant evaluation of your life against realities you don't fully understand. Think about how strange this would have seemed throughout most of human history. For thousands of years, people compared themselves primarily to those around them. A village, a neighborhood, a community. Today, a single scroll can expose you to the wealthiest entrepreneur in Dubai, the fittest athlete in Australia, the most beautiful model in Italy, the most successful creator in America, and the most luxurious lifestyle imaginable, all before breakfast. The human brain never evolved for this. Your nervous system was not designed to process global comparison 24 hours a day. And yet, millions of people do exactly that. Every single morning, every single evening, every single spare moment. Then they wonder why they feel exhausted. The answer is hidden in a simple truth. Comparison creates psychological tension, and tension consumes energy. Imagine running a race. Now imagine running a race while constantly turning your head to see where everyone else is. What happens? You lose rhythm. You lose focus. You lose momentum. You waste energy. You stop running your race and start reacting to theirs. That is exactly what comparison does to life. It shifts attention away from growth and toward measurement, away from purpose and toward status, away from progress and toward judgment. And judgment is expensive because there will always be someone ahead of you in some category, always. Someone wealthier, someone younger, someone smarter, someone stronger, someone more accomplished, someone more attractive, someone more experienced. If your peace depends on being ahead of everyone else, peace becomes impossible. The finish line keeps moving, the target keeps changing, the comparison never ends. One young professional described this experience perfectly. She had achieved goals she once dreamed about: a good income, a beautiful apartment, meaningful work, supportive friends. From the outside, her life looked successful, yet she felt increasingly unhappy. Why? Because every achievement was immediately compared against somebody else's larger achievement. Nothing felt enough. Every victory lasted a few hours before comparison erased it. Imagine spending years climbing a mountain only to reach the top and immediately focus on a taller mountain in the distance. You never experience arrival. You never experience gratitude. You never experience satisfaction. Only pursuit, only deficiency, only lack. Eventually, even success becomes exhausting. This reveals one of the most important lessons in the energy code. Gratitude protects energy, comparison drains it. Not because gratitude ignores ambition, because gratitude stabilizes perspective. You can be grateful and ambitious simultaneously. You can appreciate where you are while building toward where you're going. The two are not opposites. In fact, they strengthen each other. Gratitude creates emotional stability. Ambition creates movement. Together, they create sustainable growth. Without gratitude, ambition often becomes desperation, and desperation is exhausting. There is another hidden cost of comparison. It blinds you to your own journey. When you're obsessed with another person's chapter 20, you forget to appreciate your own chapter 5. You forget how far you've come. You forget what you've overcome. You forget the obstacles you've survived. You forget the lessons you've learned. You forget the person you used to be. This is why reflection matters. Not reflection on others, reflection on yourself. Think back 5 years. Who were you? What did you know? What scared you? What habits controlled you? What challenges felt impossible? Now compare that version of yourself to who you are today. Maybe you still have a long way to go. Most of us do. But chances are you've also traveled farther than you realize. Growth often feels invisible while it's happening because we're living inside it. Yet when viewed across years, transformation becomes obvious. One reason people lose energy is that they constantly measure distance remaining while ignoring distance traveled. Imagine driving across a country while focusing exclusively on how far remains. The journey feels endless. But when you occasionally look back and see how far you've come, perspective changes. Progress becomes visible. Hope becomes stronger. Energy returns. Another dangerous form of comparison involves identity. This happens when people begin comparing their entire life to somebody else's highlight reel. The comparison isn't fair. It never was. Because you're comparing your behind-the-scenes reality to someone's carefully selected moments. You know your fears, your doubts, your mistakes, your struggles, your insecurities, but you only see their victories, their celebrations, their achievements, their polished presentation, and then you wonder why your life feels smaller. Imagine comparing an entire movie to a single promotional poster. The comparison makes no sense, yet people do it every day. They compare complexity to presentation, reality to marketing, life to performance, and the result is predictable. Exhaustion, discouragement, self-doubt. The antidote is not isolation. The antidote is awareness, learning to recognize comparison while it happens, learning to redirect attention, learning to ask a different question, not how do I compare, but how am I growing? That question changes everything, because growth is personal, growth is individual, growth is internal. Growth doesn't require anyone else's permission, and growth generates energy because it creates momentum. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. When people feel themselves moving forward, energy increases. When people feel stuck, energy decreases. This is why small wins matter. A completed workout, a difficult conversation handled well, a new skill practiced, a promise kept to yourself, a distraction resisted, a chapter read, a step taken. These moments seem small, but they create momentum, and momentum creates belief. Belief creates action. Action creates progress. Progress creates energy. This cycle becomes one of the most powerful engines in your life. If you're listening right now, I want to ask something simple. What's one area where you've been unfairly comparing yourself to others? Take a moment and think honestly, not to judge yourself, to free yourself, because awareness is where freedom begins. And once comparison loosens its grip, something surprising becomes possible. You start noticing another hidden truth. The things that drain your energy are not always external. Sometimes the greatest drain comes from the conversations happening entirely inside your own mind. The stories you tell yourself, the beliefs you repeat, the identities you carry. And in the next chapter, we're going to explore perhaps the most influential energy source of all. Because the voice you hear most often throughout your life is your own. And whether that voice builds energy or destroys it changes everything. Dear viewers, write which city you're from. It's interesting to see which corners of the world are watching our videos. Chapter 6. The Voice in Your Head. Long before another person believes in you, doubts you, encourages you, criticizes you, or misunderstands you, there is one voice that reaches you first, your own. And whether you realize it or not, that voice is shaping your energy every single day, not occasionally, not during major life events, every day, every hour, every challenge, every setback, every opportunity, every quiet moment when nobody else is around. The strange thing is that most people are extremely careful about who they allow into their homes, yet they allow destructive thoughts unlimited access to their minds. Imagine living with someone who followed you everywhere, someone who constantly pointed out mistakes, questioned your abilities, dismissed your progress, magnified your failures, predicted your future would go badly, reminded you of every embarrassing moment from years ago. How long would it take before you felt exhausted? A week? A month? A year? Now consider something uncomfortable. Many people are already living with that person. That person is their inner dialogue, and because the voice sounds familiar, they mistake it for truth. But familiarity and truth are not the same thing. One of the most powerful discoveries in personal growth is realizing that not every thought deserves your trust. Just because a thought appears does not mean it is accurate. Just because a fear exists does not mean it is prophetic. Just because a doubt is loud does not mean it is wise. Yet millions of people treat every negative thought as evidence. The mind whispers, "You're behind." They believe it. The mind whispers, "You'll probably fail." They believe it. The mind whispers, "You're not capable enough." They believe it. And slowly, those thoughts become part of their identity. The cost is enormous because identity influences behavior. Behavior influences results. Results influence confidence, and confidence influences energy. Everything is connected. This is why two people can face identical circumstances and experience completely different levels of motivation. One person sees difficulty and thinks, "This is hard, but I'll figure it out." The other sees difficulty and thinks, "This proves I'm not capable." Same situation, different interpretation, different energy. The event matters. The story matters more. A teacher once told his students something remarkable. He said, "You do not experience life directly. You experience your interpretation of life." At first glance, it sounds philosophical, but think about it carefully. Two people lose a job. One sees catastrophe. The other sees redirection. Two people experience rejection. One sees proof of inadequacy. The other sees information. Two people encounter failure. One sees finality. The other sees feedback. The event is the same. The interpretation changes everything, and interpretation consumes or creates energy. This does not mean pretending everything is positive. Life contains real pain, real disappointment, real difficulty. The goal is not delusion. The goal is perspective. Perspective determines whether challenges become fuel or become anchors. One of the most exhausting habits in modern life is catastrophic thinking. The mind jumps immediately to worst-case scenarios. One unanswered message becomes rejection. One mistake becomes disaster. One setback becomes permanent failure. One uncertainty becomes evidence that everything is falling apart. The brain begins constructing entire futures out of incomplete information, and the body responds as if those imagined futures are already happening. Heart rate increases, stress hormones rise, tension builds, energy drains, all because of stories that may never become reality. Think about how much energy humanity loses worrying about futures that never arrive. How many sleepless nights? How many anxious mornings? How many opportunities abandoned? How many dreams postponed? Not because reality was impossible, because fear convinced people it was. There is a sentence worth remembering. Do not suffer twice. If difficulty comes, face it when it arrives. Do not force yourself to live through it hundreds of times in advance. Yet this is what worry often does. It asks the mind to repeatedly rehearse pain that has not happened, and every rehearsal consumes energy. One executive described anxiety as paying interest on a debt you may never owe. That image stayed with me because it's accurate. People spend emotional currency on imagined futures every day, then wonder why they feel exhausted. The mind has been working overtime, fighting battles that don't exist, preparing for disasters that never come, defending against threats that remain imaginary. This is not weakness, it's human nature. But awareness allows you to interrupt the pattern, and interruption changes everything. The next time your mind begins predicting catastrophe, pause. Ask yourself a simple question. What facts do I actually know? Not assumptions, not fears, facts. That question creates space. Space between reality and imagination. Space between observation and interpretation. Space where energy can be preserved instead of wasted. There is another form of self-talk that quietly destroys motivation. Perfectionism. Many people assume perfectionism is a strength. Often, it becomes a prison. Because perfectionism doesn't simply demand excellence. It demands impossibility. It tells you your work isn't good enough, your progress isn't fast enough, your effort isn't sufficient, your results aren't impressive enough, and because perfection can never truly be reached, satisfaction remains permanently out of reach. Imagine running on a treadmill that accelerates every time you get close to catching up. That's what perfectionism feels like. No finish line, no arrival, no celebration, only endless pursuit. Eventually, exhaustion becomes inevitable. The most energized people are rarely perfect. They are often adaptable, resilient, willing to learn, willing to fail, willing to improve, willing to continue. They conserve energy by refusing to fight impossible standards. Instead of demanding perfection, they pursue progress. And progress creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence creates energy. One small improvement repeated consistently becomes powerful. A single better choice today, a slightly healthier habit, a slightly calmer response, a slightly more focused hour. These seem insignificant in isolation, yet lives are not built in isolation. Lives are built through accumulation. Drops carve stone, not because any individual drop is powerful, because repetition creates transformation. The same principle applies to your internal dialogue. One encouraging thought will not change your life. One compassionate moment will not solve everything. One new perspective will not erase years of conditioning. But repeated consistently, those small shifts alter identity, and identity changes destiny. Imagine spending the next year speaking to yourself as you would speak to someone you genuinely care about, not with endless praise, with honesty, with patience, with respect. How different would your energy feel? How much mental weight would disappear? How much courage would return? How many risks would become possible? Because energy is not only generated by food and sleep. Energy is generated by belief. The belief that your effort matters. The belief that growth remains possible. The belief that you can adapt. The belief that your future is not predetermined by your past. These beliefs create movement, and movement creates vitality. If this chapter resonates with you, take a moment later today and pay attention to your internal conversations. Not to judge them, simply to notice them. Awareness alone often reveals patterns that have been draining energy for years, because what you repeatedly tell yourself becomes the emotional climate in which you live. And climates shape everything. But there is another force shaping your energy that many people underestimate. It affects your mood, your focus, your resilience, your motivation, your confidence, and it operates quietly through the people you spend time with. The next chapter may challenge the way you think about relationships altogether. Because sometimes exhaustion is not coming from your schedule. Sometimes it's coming from your environment. And once you recognize that truth, you begin protecting your energy in a completely different way. Chapter 7. The energy of your environment. Some people spend years trying to improve their lives without realizing they're trying to grow in an environment that constantly drains them. It's like planting a healthy seed in poisoned soil and then blaming the seed for not flourishing. Eventually, the seed begins to believe it's the problem. Many people do exactly the same thing. They blame themselves for exhaustion that is being created by their surroundings. And the surroundings I'm talking about are not only physical, they're relational, emotional, digital, psychological. Everything around you is either contributing energy or consuming it. Nothing is neutral for very long. Think about how different you feel after spending an hour with someone who genuinely inspires you, someone who listens, someone who believes growth is possible, someone who encourages action, someone who brings clarity instead of confusion. Notice what happens to your energy. You stand taller, you think bigger, you feel lighter. Possibilities appear. Now think about the opposite. An hour with someone who complains constantly, criticizes everything, predicts failure, lives inside negativity, finds problems in every solution. Notice how your body feels afterward. Heavier, slower, more doubtful, more drained. The conversation ended. The energy remained. That is the power of environment. Years ago, researchers observed something fascinating. Human beings unconsciously absorb emotional states from those around them. Not perfectly, not instantly, but consistently. Emotions spread, attitudes spread, mindset spread, energy spreads, which means one important question becomes unavoidable. What kind of emotional climate are you living in? Because climates shape outcomes. A flower growing in sunlight develops differently than one growing in darkness. Human beings are no different. One of the most exhausting experiences in life is being surrounded by people who constantly pull your attention away from your future, not because they're evil, often because they're afraid. Fear frequently disguises itself as advice. You tell someone you're starting a business. They list everything that could go wrong. You talk about a new opportunity. They explain why it probably won't work. You share a dream. They offer reasons to stay where you are. Again, they may not intend harm. They may genuinely care. But fear reproduces itself. And if you're not careful, other people's limitations begin sounding like your own. That creates a subtle but powerful form of energy loss. Because now you're carrying not only your own doubts, you're carrying theirs too. There is a reason visionaries throughout history often protected their dreams during early stages, not because they hated people, because fragile growth requires protection. A small flame can be extinguished by a strong wind. An established fire can withstand storms. The same applies to goals. The same applies to confidence. The same applies to transformation. Not everyone deserves immediate access to your developing future. Sometimes energy is preserved through selective exposure. That idea becomes even more important in the digital age, because environments are no longer limited to physical spaces. Today, you can carry thousands of voices inside your pocket. Every feed becomes an environment. Every platform becomes an environment. Every content source becomes an environment. And many people are consuming emotional pollution every day without recognizing it. Outrage, fear, conflict, comparison, division, negativity, catastrophe, hour after hour, day after day. Then they wonder why they feel mentally exhausted. Imagine drinking contaminated water for years. Eventually, symptoms appear. The same principle applies psychologically. What enters your mind repeatedly begins shaping your internal state. This does not mean avoiding reality. It means becoming intentional. There is a difference between being informed and being overwhelmed. There is a difference between awareness and obsession. There is a difference between learning and drowning. One nourishes energy. The other consumes it. A mentor once offered a powerful observation. He said, "Protect your mind the way you protect your home." Think about that. You don't allow random strangers to enter your house whenever they want. You don't hand them keys. You don't give unlimited access. Yet many people allow unlimited access to their attention, unlimited access to their emotions, unlimited access to their thoughts. Every headline enters, every opinion enters, every distraction enters. No boundaries, no filters, no protection. Eventually, exhaustion becomes inevitable. Because openness without boundaries becomes vulnerability. And vulnerability without awareness becomes depletion. There is another environment many people overlook. Their physical space, the room where they sleep, the desk where they work, the places where they spend most of their lives. Physical environments influence energy more than most people realize. A cluttered space often creates cognitive load. Your brain continuously processes unfinished signals, objects, tasks, disorder, visual noise. Each item demands a tiny amount of attention. One item is insignificant. Hundreds become exhausting. This is why some people feel unexpectedly lighter after organizing a room. The room changed, but so did the mental load attached to it. Order creates clarity. Clarity creates energy. Energy creates action. The chain is stronger than most people realize. Now let's talk about something deeper. Relationships. Because relationships may be the most powerful energy source or energy drain in existence. Healthy relationships create expansion. You feel safer, stronger, more confident, more capable. You recover faster from setbacks. You handle stress more effectively. You experience greater resilience. Why? Because human beings were never meant to navigate life entirely alone. Connection creates strength. Belonging creates stability. Support creates energy. But unhealthy relationships create the opposite effect. Constant tension, constant uncertainty, constant emotional labor, constant anxiety. The mind never fully relaxes. The nervous system remains alert. And alert systems consume enormous amounts of energy. Imagine sleeping beside an alarm clock that might go off at any moment. Even when it's silent, part of you remains vigilant. Many people live this way emotionally, always anticipating conflict, always preparing for disappointment, always managing tension. The cost is profound, not because they're weak, because vigilance is exhausting. One of the hardest lessons in adulthood is realizing that not every relationship deserves unlimited access to your energy. Some relationships require boundaries. Some require distance. Some require honesty. Some require change. And occasionally, some require endings. Not because you're cruel, because your life matters too. Your future matters. Your health matters. Your energy matters. The goal is not isolation. The goal is stewardship. Learning to protect what fuels your growth. Learning to recognize what repeatedly drains it. Learning to create environments where your best self has room to emerge. Imagine placing two identical plants in different environments. One receives sunlight, water, space, and care. The other receives neglect, darkness, and stress. Months later, the outcomes look completely different. The plants were not different. The environments were. How often do people forget this about themselves? How often do they blame their potential while ignoring their conditions? How often do they criticize their energy while remaining immersed in environments that guarantee depletion? The energy code teaches something simple but powerful. You cannot consistently create high energy inside low-quality environments. Eventually, the environment wins, unless you consciously redesign it. And redesign begins with awareness. Take a moment and ask yourself honestly, who energizes me? What energizes me? Where do I feel most alive? Where do I feel most depleted? Those questions are not small. They are diagnostic tools, because the answers reveal where energy is being created and where it is being lost. If you've made it this far in the audiobook, you're beginning to see something important. Energy is not random. It follows patterns. It follows principles. It follows laws. And perhaps no law is more important than the one we're about to explore next. Because even in the perfect environment, with supportive people, clear thinking, and emotional balance, there is still one factor that determines whether energy grows or disappears: purpose. And without purpose, even a comfortable life can become surprisingly exhausting. What you're about to discover may explain why some people feel alive during hardship, while others feel empty during success. And that distinction changes everything. Chapter 8. Purpose is energy. A person can survive for a surprisingly long time without comfort, without certainty, without recognition, without perfect conditions. But very few people can thrive for long without meaning. Because meaning is not merely a philosophical idea. Meaning is fuel. Purpose is fuel. Direction is fuel. And when purpose disappears, energy often disappears with it. This explains one of the strangest realities of human life. Two people can perform equally demanding work. One feels exhausted. The other feels energized. The difference is not always the workload. The difference is often the meaning attached to the workload. A parent wakes up at 3 in the morning to care for a child. Physically exhausting, emotionally demanding. Yet many parents endure years of this because love transforms sacrifice. Purpose changes the experience. An entrepreneur works weekends building a vision. A student studies late into the night pursuing a future. An athlete trains through discomfort, chasing excellence. A creator spends countless hours refining work nobody may ever see. Why do they continue? Because purpose creates energy that comfort cannot provide. This is one of the hidden truths of the energy code. People are not only drained by effort. People are drained by effort that feels meaningless. There is a profound difference. Think about a time you worked hard on something you genuinely cared about. Perhaps the hours disappeared. Perhaps you felt immersed. Perhaps fatigue arrived differently, not absent, different. Now think about spending the same amount of time on something that felt empty. Pointless meetings, unnecessary conflict, tasks disconnected from any larger purpose. The energy cost feels heavier, the clock moves slower, motivation evaporates faster, because human beings need more than activity. They need significance. The tragedy is that many people spend years disconnected from what truly matters to them, not because they don't care, because life becomes noisy, Responsibilities multiply. Bills arrive. Expectations accumulate. Obligations expand. And gradually, survival replaces purpose. The days become functional, efficient, predictable. Yet something essential begins fading. Not productivity, aliveness. There is a difference. You can be productive and feel empty. You can be busy and feel lost. You can be successful and feel disconnected. Many people discover this only after achieving goals they believed would solve everything. The promotion arrives. The money arrives. The recognition arrives. The milestone arrives. Yet the expected fulfillment never fully appears. Why? Because achievement and meaning are not identical. Achievement answers the question, what have I done? Meaning answers the question, why does it matter? Without the second question, the first often feels incomplete. A businessman once spent 20 years building a highly successful company. From the outside, he had everything: financial freedom, status, influence, respect. Yet he described feeling strangely tired all the time, not physically, existentially. Eventually, he realized something important. He had spent years building a life that looked impressive, but no longer felt meaningful. His energy returned only when he reconnected with work that aligned with his values. The work became harder, but life became lighter, because purpose changes weight. This is why some people endure extraordinary challenges while maintaining remarkable resilience. Purpose gives suffering context. Without context, pain feels random. With context, pain becomes part of a larger story. The difficulty remains real, but it becomes bearable. A mountain climber understands this instinctively. Every step is difficult. The weather may be harsh, the terrain may be unforgiving, the body may ache. Yet the summit provides meaning. The destination organizes the struggle. Life works similarly. Purpose organizes effort. Without purpose, effort feels chaotic. With purpose, effort becomes directional. That direction creates energy. One reason modern exhaustion has become so widespread is that many people are surrounded by goals but disconnected from purpose. Goals are useful, important even, but goals alone are not enough, because goals eventually end. You reach them. Then what? Purpose remains. Purpose continues. Purpose evolves. Purpose sustains. Goals provide targets. Purpose provides fuel. Imagine trying to drive across a country with a powerful vehicle, but an empty fuel tank. The vehicle matters. The fuel matters more. Purpose is fuel. And every person listening to this audiobook has a unique relationship with it. For some people, purpose emerges through family. For others, through service. For others, through creativity. For others, through growth. For others, through faith. For others, through contribution. The specific form matters less than the connection itself, because energy increases when actions align with values. Alignment is one of the most overlooked concepts in modern life. When your behavior consistently contradicts your values, energy drains. Not immediately, gradually. Imagine spending years saying health matters while neglecting your body, or saying relationships matter while ignoring people you love, or saying freedom matters while remaining trapped in habits that limit you. The contradiction creates internal friction, and friction consumes energy. Alignment reduces friction. Alignment creates coherence. Coherence creates vitality. This doesn't mean perfection. Nobody achieves perfect alignment. The goal is awareness, movement, adjustment, growth, 1 degree at a time. There is a beautiful image I often return to. Imagine rowing a boat. If both oars move together, the boat travels efficiently. If the oars move against each other, progress becomes exhausting. Many people are rowing against themselves. Part of them wants growth. Part of them wants comfort. Part of them wants change. Part of them wants certainty. Part of them wants freedom. Part of them fears responsibility. The conflict creates exhaustion, not because they're incapable, because internal contradiction requires enormous energy. Purpose helps resolve this conflict. Purpose creates direction. Direction creates clarity. Clarity reduces resistance. Resistance decreases. Energy increases. That is why people often feel renewed after making difficult but meaningful decisions. Leaving the wrong job, starting the right project, setting a necessary boundary, having an honest conversation, changing a destructive habit. The decision may be hard, yet energy often returns afterward because alignment has increased. The internal battle has decreased. One of the most revealing questions you can ask yourself is this: what activities make me lose track of time? Not because they're easy, because they feel meaningful. Those moments offer clues, not absolute answers. Clues. The activities that create engagement often reveal important aspects of purpose. Pay attention to them. They are signals, and signals matter, especially in a world filled with noise. If this message resonates with you, I'd love for you to remember one simple phrase: energy follows meaning, not perfectly, not instantly, but consistently. The more connected you become to what genuinely matters, the more likely your energy is to support you instead of abandon you. Because purpose does not eliminate fatigue. It transforms your relationship with it. A meaningful struggle feels different than a meaningless one, and that distinction may explain more of your exhaustion than you realize. But there is another hidden factor influencing energy every single day. A factor so ordinary that most people overlook it completely. It begins the moment you wake up. It shapes your mood before breakfast. It influences your decisions before lunch. And it quietly determines the direction of your entire day. We're about to explore the power of daily rhythms. Because energy is not only about what you do, it's also about when you do it. And understanding that principle unlocks an entirely new level of vitality. If you appreciate our efforts and our thoughts, subscribe and like this video. We need to show the world that there are many people like us. We must always continue to improve. Chapter 9. The Rhythm of Energy. Most people think energy is something you either have or you don't. A gift, a personality trait, a lucky advantage that some people seem born with. But energy is far more predictable than that. Energy follows rhythms, patterns, cycles, flows, and the moment you begin understanding those rhythms, your relationship with productivity, focus, motivation, and well-being starts changing in profound ways. The problem is that modern life encourages people to ignore their natural rhythms. We are taught to operate like machines, always available, always responsive, always connected, always productive, yet human beings are not machines. Machines run continuously until they break. Human beings operate in cycles, and when those cycles are ignored, exhaustion becomes inevitable. Think about nature. The ocean has tides. The moon has phases. The seasons change. Day becomes night. Night becomes day. Everything in existence moves in rhythms. Why would human energy be any different? Yet many people wake up every morning and immediately begin fighting their own biology. They reach for stimulation before awareness, noise before clarity, reaction before intention. The day begins in response mode, and once response mode takes over, energy starts leaking immediately. Imagine standing at the entrance of your day with a bucket full of water. Every distraction pokes a small hole. Every unnecessary stress creates another. Every impulsive decision creates another. By evening, the bucket is nearly empty. Then people wonder where their energy went. It didn't disappear. It leaked, one decision at a time. This is why mornings matter more than most people realize. Not because successful people wake up at a specific hour. Not because there is something magical about 5 in the morning, but because the first moments of the day often establish the emotional and mental rhythm that follows. Think about the difference between 2 mornings. In the first, you wake up and immediately enter chaos. Notifications, emails, news, messages, stress, urgency, comparison, noise. Before your mind has fully awakened, the world is already telling you what deserves your attention. In the second, you begin with awareness, a few moments of quiet, reflection, movement, breathing, planning, intention. The difference may seem small, but small beginnings create large outcomes. A plane leaving an airport only 1 degree off course eventually arrives in a completely different destination. The same principle applies to your days. The first hour often determines far more than people realize. One mentor used to say, "Own your morning before the world rents it from you." At first, it sounded like a clever phrase. Later, it revealed itself as wisdom, because attention is constantly being rented, sold, competed for, pulled in countless directions. If you don't consciously direct your attention, someone else will. And attention determines energy. The relationship is unavoidable. Where attention goes, energy follows. This is why many people feel exhausted by noon, not because they've done meaningful work, because their attention has been fragmented repeatedly. A text message, a notification, a headline, an email, a social media post, a random distraction. Each interruption appears insignificant, yet collectively they create cognitive exhaustion. Imagine trying to read a book while someone interrupts you every 2 minutes. Eventually, your focus collapses. The interruptions win. Now imagine living that way every day. That is the reality for millions of people. No wonder concentration feels difficult. No wonder motivation feels fragile. No wonder mental fatigue arrives so quickly. The brain was designed for periods of focus and periods of recovery, not constant interruption, not perpetual stimulation, not endless context switching. This brings us to one of the most valuable principles in the energy code. Protect your peak energy hours. Everyone has them. For some people, it's early morning. For others, it's late morning. For some, it's afternoon. For others, it's evening. The specific time matters less than the awareness. When are you naturally strongest? Most focused? Most creative? Most clear? Most energized? Those hours are precious. Yet many people waste them accidentally. They spend their best energy responding instead of creating, reacting instead of building, managing instead of advancing. Then when they finally turn toward important work, the energy is gone. The peak has passed. The battery has already been spent. Imagine spending your entire paycheck on random purchases before paying for what matters most. That's what many people do with energy. They spend it impulsively, then wonder why nothing meaningful progresses. Energy management is not merely about having more energy. It's about allocating energy wisely. That distinction changes everything. A focused hour can outperform an exhausted day. A clear mind can accomplish what a distracted mind struggles with for weeks. One reason successful people often appear extraordinarily productive is not because they work endlessly. It's because they understand leverage. They place important actions inside high-energy windows. They align effort with rhythm, and alignment creates results. There is another rhythm many people overlook: recovery. Modern culture celebrates exertion. Push harder, work longer, stay busy, keep going. Yet every high-performing system includes recovery. Athletes recover, muscles recover, forests recover, the earth itself recovers. Recovery is not weakness. Recovery is part of performance. Without recovery, performance eventually collapses. Think about how many people wear exhaustion as a badge of honor. I'm so busy. I'm running on 3 hours of sleep. I never stop. The statements sound impressive until the consequences arrive. Burnout, health issues, mental fatigue, lost creativity, emotional numbness, broken relationships. The bill eventually comes due, and recovery becomes unavoidable. The wisest people understand something simpler. Rest before you're forced to. Recover before you're broken. Pause before collapse becomes necessary. Because preventive recovery costs less than emergency recovery, much less. There is a beautiful image that captures this idea. Imagine an archer pulling back a bow. To someone unfamiliar with archery, it may appear as though the arrow is moving backward. But the backward movement creates forward power. Recovery works similarly. The pause creates strength. The stillness creates momentum. The restoration creates performance. Yet many people feel guilty resting. They mistake motion for progress, activity for achievement, busyness for importance. But movement without direction often creates exhaustion instead of advancement. A person can run in circles all day and still end exactly where they started. Energy deserves intention, not merely effort. One question has helped countless people reclaim energy. What actually restores me? Not distracts, restores. The answers vary: a walk, a conversation, reading, exercise, prayer, nature, journaling, music, silence, deep work, time with loved ones. The specific activity matters less than the effect. True recovery leaves you stronger than before. False recovery simply occupies time. Learning the difference changes everything, because not all breaks are restorative. Not all rest creates energy, and not all activity drains it. A meaningful project may energize you more than passive entertainment. A long walk may restore more than hours of scrolling. A deep conversation may heal more than a weekend of avoidance. Energy follows deeper laws than convenience, and understanding those laws gives you leverage. If you've stayed with this audiobook so far, you've already uncovered something powerful. Your exhaustion is not random. It has causes, patterns, triggers, mechanisms, and awareness is turning those invisible forces into visible ones. But we're about to go deeper, because there is one energy leak that affects nearly everyone, rich or poor, young or old, successful or struggling. And unlike many other energy drains, this one often disguises itself as responsibility. Its name is worry, and the amount of life people lose to worry is far greater than most will ever realize. Chapter 10. The Cost of Worry. There are people carrying problems that do not exist, not because they are irrational, not because they are weak, because the human mind has a remarkable ability to create suffering from possibilities. And that ability, when left unmanaged, becomes one of the greatest drains on human energy. Worry feels productive. That's what makes it so dangerous. If anxiety simply felt useless, most people would abandon it. But worry creates the illusion of preparation, the illusion of control, the illusion that if you think about a problem long enough, you'll somehow prevent it from happening. Yet life rarely works that way. Think about how many times you've worried intensely about something that never happened. A conversation, a decision, a rejection, a failure, a disaster, a future scenario. Days of mental energy consumed, hours of emotional investment, entire nights sacrificed, only for reality to unfold completely differently. The cost was real, the threat was not. One elderly man was once asked what caused him the most suffering in life. His answer was unforgettable. Most of the things I worried about never happened. There is wisdom hidden inside those words, because worry often asks us to experience pain twice, once in imagination and once in reality, if the difficulty actually arrives. Sometimes even dozens of times in imagination, hundreds, thousands. The mind rehearses catastrophe endlessly. Meanwhile, the present moment slips away unnoticed. This is one of the central ideas of the energy code. Energy exists in the present. Worry drags energy into imagined futures. Regret drags energy into remembered pasts. Presence returns energy to where life is actually happening, right now, not tomorrow, not next year, now. The challenge is that modern life gives the mind endless opportunities to worry. Economic uncertainty, career pressure, relationships, health, family, technology, politics, global events. The list never ends. There will always be something available for concern, always. If peace depends on a worry-free world, peace becomes impossible. Because the world has never been worry-free, and it never will be. The goal is not eliminating uncertainty. The goal is learning how to live effectively despite uncertainty. That distinction changes everything. Imagine two sailors crossing the ocean. Both encounter storms. Both face unpredictable conditions. Both experience risk. One spends every moment terrified of what might happen. The other focuses on navigating what is happening. Same ocean, different experience, different energy. One of the greatest energy leaks occurs when people attempt to control things that are fundamentally outside their control. Other people's opinions, other people's choices, future outcomes, economic trends, random events, the weather, the past. Life becomes exhausting when your emotional state depends on controlling uncontrollable things, because control never arrives, only frustration. One mentor taught a simple framework. He divided life into two categories: things I can influence, things I cannot. Then he spent most of his energy in the first category. Simple, not easy, but powerful. Think about how much energy is wasted arguing with reality, wishing the past were different, demanding certainty from an uncertain future, wanting people to become who they are not, fighting facts, resisting truth. Reality always wins those battles, always. Acceptance is not surrender. Acceptance is recognizing reality accurately so energy can be used productively. Imagine standing in a river trying to push the water backward. You can exhaust yourself for hours. The river remains unchanged. Acceptance means acknowledging the direction of the river and deciding how to move within it. Energy returns the moment resistance decreases. This becomes especially important during difficult seasons. Because life will occasionally challenge everyone. Loss arrives. Disappointment arrives. Unexpected setbacks arrive. No one escapes entirely. The question is not whether difficulty appears. The question is how you relate to it. Many people unconsciously add suffering to pain. Pain is unavoidable. Suffering is often amplified through resistance, through mental replay, through catastrophic interpretation, through endless what-if scenarios. The event hurts. Then the mind keeps reopening the wound again and again, again and again, again and again. Years can disappear this way, not because the original event lasted years, because the mind continued reliving it. One reason worry drains so much energy is that it creates a permanent state of anticipation. The nervous system never fully relaxes, never fully settles, never fully recovers. Imagine sleeping with one eye open every night. Eventually, exhaustion becomes inevitable. Many people live emotionally this way, always preparing, always anticipating, always expecting trouble. The body pays the price, the mind pays the price, the spirit pays the price. One of the most transformative questions you can ask during moments of worry is surprisingly simple. What is actually happening right now? Not tomorrow, not next month, not next year. Right now. Often the answer is revealing. Right now, you're sitting safely in a room. Right now, you're breathing. Right now, the feared event has not occurred. Right now, life is manageable. The present moment frequently contains far less danger than the mind predicts. This doesn't solve every problem, but it restores perspective, and perspective restores energy. There is another subtle form of worry that quietly destroys motivation: the fear of making mistakes. Many people spend years waiting for certainty before acting. The perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect conditions, the perfect confidence, the perfect opportunity. They wait and wait and wait. Life keeps moving because certainty is rarely available in advance. Action creates clarity more often than thought does. Movement reveals information. Experience creates understanding. Waiting creates stagnation, and stagnation drains energy. One entrepreneur described this beautifully. He said, "I spent 5 years worrying about failure and 6 months actually building." The 6 months changed his life. The 5 years changed nothing. Think about that. How much energy has been spent preparing for lives we never lived, preparing for conversations we never had, preparing for failures that never occurred, preparing for futures that never arrived? Worry promises protection. Often it delivers exhaustion. There is a phrase worth carrying forward: prepare when preparation helps. Release when preparation ends. Because beyond a certain point, preparation becomes rumination, and rumination becomes energy loss. The strongest people are not those who never worry. They are those who recognize worry and return to action, return to presence, return to reality, return to what can actually be influenced. That return creates power, and power creates energy. If this audiobook has helped you so far, consider making a quiet commitment to yourself. Not a dramatic promise, a simple one. The next time worry begins consuming your attention, pause and ask, "What can I do right now?" Often, that single question transforms anxiety into movement, because action and worry rarely occupy the same space for long. And action leads us to another important discovery, a discovery about something nearly every exhausted person is searching for: confidence. Not confidence as performance, not confidence as arrogance. Real confidence, the kind that creates calm energy instead of nervous energy. The kind that doesn't depend on applause, the kind that remains steady when life becomes difficult. And the truth about where confidence actually comes from may surprise you. Chapter 11. Confidence is an energy source. Most people believe confidence comes before action. That is why they keep waiting. Waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel certain, waiting to feel stronger, waiting to feel fearless, waiting to feel qualified. But confidence rarely works that way. Confidence is usually the result, not the requirement. And misunderstanding this principle has kept countless people trapped, because they are waiting for a feeling that only arrives after movement begins. Think about a child learning to walk. No child waits until they feel confident. They attempt, they stumble, they fall, they adjust, they continue, and through repetition, confidence emerges, not before the effort, because of the effort. Yet somehow, adults forget this. We expect certainty before action, guarantees before commitment, results before risk. Life refuses that arrangement. Life asks for movement first, then provides evidence, then confidence follows. This matters because confidence and energy are deeply connected. When confidence rises, energy often rises with it. When confidence collapses, energy often follows. The reason is simple. Confidence creates possibility. Possibility creates momentum. Momentum creates vitality. Without confidence, every challenge feels larger. Every obstacle appears more threatening. Every setback feels more personal. The same mountain looks steeper when you doubt your ability to climb it. Years ago, a young man approached a mentor and asked a question many people secretly ask themselves. How do I become more confident? The mentor smiled and gave an answer he wasn't expecting. Keep promises to yourself. That was it. No complicated philosophy, no secret technique. Keep promises to yourself. At first, the answer seemed too simple. Then its power became obvious. Every time you make a promise to yourself and break it, trust decreases. You tell yourself you'll wake up earlier. You don't. You tell yourself you'll start exercising. You don't. You tell yourself you'll stop procrastinating. You don't. You tell yourself you'll begin tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. Over time, something important happens. You stop trusting your own words. And when self-trust disappears, confidence struggles to survive. Now consider the opposite. You make a small promise and keep it. Then another and keep it. Then another and keep it. Nothing dramatic, nothing heroic, just consistency. Slowly, trust begins returning, and trust creates confidence. Because confidence is not believing you'll never fail. Confidence is believing you'll respond when life asks something of you. That distinction changes everything. Many people think confidence means feeling powerful all the time. It doesn't. Some of the most confident people in the world still experience doubt, still experience uncertainty, still experience fear. The difference is that they do not allow those emotions to make decisions for them. Fear may speak. It simply doesn't drive. One of the hidden reasons confidence creates energy is that it reduces internal conflict. Imagine you're standing at the edge of an opportunity, a new career, a difficult conversation, a personal goal, a meaningful challenge. Part of you wants to move forward. Another part fears failure. The conflict creates tension. Tension consumes energy, but confidence reduces hesitation. Not because risk disappears, because trust increases. You begin believing you can handle whatever happens next, and that belief creates freedom. A fascinating thing happens when people start building confidence through action. Their energy changes before their circumstances do. The promotion hasn't arrived yet. The business hasn't succeeded yet. The goal hasn't been reached yet they already feel different. Why? Because progress itself generates energy. Human beings are remarkably responsive to movement. When we feel ourselves advancing, motivation increases. When we feel stuck, motivation decreases. This is why small wins matter so much. Not because they solve everything, because they create evidence. Evidence that growth is happening. Evidence that change is possible. Evidence that effort matters. And evidence is stronger than motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Evidence remains. One completed workout becomes evidence. One promise kept becomes evidence. One difficult task finished becomes evidence. One courageous conversation becomes evidence. Evidence accumulates. Confidence grows. Energy follows. This is also why perfectionism quietly destroys confidence. Perfectionists rarely celebrate progress. They focus on gaps, deficiencies, mistakes, distance remaining. Imagine climbing a mountain while refusing to acknowledge every step upward because the summit remains far away. Eventually, the journey feels hopeless, not because progress is absent, because recognition is absent. The brain needs evidence. It needs acknowledgement. It needs proof that movement is occurring. Without that proof, energy begins fading. One of the healthiest habits you can develop is learning to recognize progress while continuing to pursue growth. Those ideas are not opposites. You can appreciate yourself without becoming complacent. You can celebrate progress without abandoning ambition. In fact, sustainable ambition often requires celebration, because endless criticism creates exhaustion. Recognition creates fuel. Think about the strongest coach you've ever known. Perhaps a teacher, a mentor, a parent, a leader, someone who brought out the best in people. Chances are they didn't motivate through constant criticism. They challenged people, absolutely. But they also recognized growth. They acknowledged effort. They reinforced progress. The human mind responds powerfully to that combination. Challenge and encouragement, growth and recognition, pressure and support. The same principle applies internally. Your relationship with yourself matters, perhaps more than you realize. There is another important truth about confidence. Confidence grows fastest when attached to competence. Not image, not appearance, competence. The ability to do something well. This is why learning creates energy. Practice creates energy. Skill development creates energy. Because every improvement increases your capacity. And increased capacity creates confidence naturally. Imagine learning a language. At first, every conversation feels difficult. Every sentence requires effort. Every mistake feels noticeable. Then, months pass. Practice accumulates. Competence grows. Suddenly, conversations become easier. Confidence appears. Not because you repeated affirmations, because you developed capability. This principle applies everywhere. Relationships, communication, leadership, health, business, creativity. Growth creates competence. Competence creates confidence. Confidence creates energy. One of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself is this: what evidence have I ignored? Because many people are stronger than they realize, wiser than they realize, more resilient than they realize. They simply overlook their own evidence, the challenges they've survived, the lessons they've learned, the obstacles they've overcome, the promises they've kept, the progress they've made. All of it matters, all of it counts, and all of it contributes to confidence. If you've stayed with this audiobook until now, I want to acknowledge something. You're already doing something many people never do. You're examining your life honestly. You're exploring your energy intentionally. You're searching for understanding rather than excuses. That matters because awareness is where transformation begins, and transformation creates momentum. But we're about to explore another principle that sits at the very heart of the energy code. A principle so powerful that once you understand it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Because the highest energy people are not necessarily those with the most talent, or the most resources, or the easiest lives. They are often the people who have mastered one simple skill. They know how to focus, and focus may be the closest thing to a superpower in the modern world. Chapter 12. Focus is modern power. The world is not suffering from a lack of information. It is suffering from a lack of focus. Information has never been more available. Knowledge has never been more accessible. Tools have never been more powerful. Yet despite all of this, countless people feel stuck. Not because they don't know enough, because they cannot hold their attention in one place long enough to transform knowledge into results. And every time attention fractures, energy leaks. This is one of the most important lessons in the energy code. Focus is not only a productivity skill, it is an energy skill. Because whatever you focus on grows stronger inside your mind. Focus on problems, and problems expand. Focus on possibilities, and possibilities expand. Focus on distractions, and distractions multiply. Focus on progress, and progress accelerates. Your attention is constantly shaping your experience of reality. That is why focus is so powerful. It determines what becomes amplified. Think about a camera lens. When the lens is unfocused, everything becomes blurry. Shapes exist, details exist, but clarity disappears. Now imagine the lens sharpening. Suddenly, the image transforms. Nothing changed externally. The focus changed. Life often works the same way. Many people are not lacking potential. They are lacking concentration. Their energy is scattered across dozens of competing priorities, half-finished projects, unresolved goals, constant interruptions, endless consumption, too many directions, too many commitments, too many inputs. And because energy follows attention, the scattering becomes exhausting. Imagine trying to dig 10 wells at the same time. You dig a little here, a little there, another little somewhere else. After months of effort, no well reaches water. Now imagine choosing one location and digging deeply. The result changes completely. Depth creates results. Scattering creates frustration. One of the greatest challenges of modern life is that distraction rarely feels dangerous. It feels harmless. A quick check, a short scroll, a brief interruption, just a moment. Yet moments accumulate. Hours disappear, days disappear, years disappear. And the tragedy is not only lost time, it is lost energy, because every distraction carries a switching cost. Your mind must leave one context and enter another, then leave again, then enter again, repeated endlessly. Eventually, mental fatigue becomes inevitable. A neuroscientist once described attention as a spotlight. Wherever the spotlight points, mental resources follow. The problem is that most people allow others to control the spotlight. Algorithms control it. Notifications control it. Urgency controls it. Other people's priorities control it. And when attention becomes externally controlled, energy becomes externally controlled too. This is why highly focused people often appear calmer, not because they have fewer responsibilities, because they have fewer unnecessary demands on their attention. They have learned something many people never realize. everything important requires protection. Relationships require protection. Health requires protection. Dreams require protection. And attention requires protection. Without protection, valuable things slowly disappear. One entrepreneur shared a lesson after years of burnout. He said, "My life changed when I stopped asking what I should add and started asking what I should remove." That sentence contains extraordinary wisdom. Because energy often returns through subtraction, remove unnecessary commitments, remove constant interruptions, remove digital clutter, remove meaningless obligations, remove mental noise. The result is not emptiness. The result is capacity, space, breathing room, energy. Most people attempt to improve life through addition. Another app, another strategy, another responsibility, another commitment. Yet growth often requires elimination before expansion. Think of a sculptor creating a masterpiece. The sculptor does not add the statue. The sculptor removes what does not belong. Focus works similarly. You remove what distracts from what matters. And suddenly, clarity appears. There is another reason focus creates energy. Focused effort generates visible progress. Visible progress generates motivation. Motivation generates momentum. Momentum generates energy. The cycle reinforces itself. This explains why people often feel energized after completing meaningful work. Not because the work was easy, because completion creates psychological reward. The brain loves progress. It responds powerfully to movement. This is why unfinished tasks feel heavy. The mind keeps tracking them, remembering them, monitoring them, keeping them active. Each unfinished commitment occupies mental space. Some people are carrying dozens of open loops simultaneously. Projects, promises, goals, responsibilities, decisions. No wonder they feel exhausted. Part of their energy is tied up in everything left unresolved. One practical habit can transform this dramatically. Finish more things, not everything, more things. Complete the email, complete the workout, complete the conversation, complete the chapter, complete the task. Completion creates relief. Relief creates energy. Energy creates momentum.